The Warrior come Wrath of the Lich King is in a really, really good place. If you enjoy Warrior in Vanilla, you enjoyed it in TBC, it only gets better in Wrath. As far as tanking goes, with some of the changes we're going to talk about today, AoE tanking is no longer a problem, your single target threat is incredibly high, and your survivability is very, very strong, with some of the best defensive cooldowns in the game. When it comes to DPS, both Arms and Fury are incredibly fun specs to play, fast-paced, melee action. If that's what you're about, then you'll absolutely love it. They do start a little bit low out of the gate due to not having access to enough armor pen, but come end of Ulduar / phase 2, when you can start getting your hands on lots of armor pen gear, you quickly transform into a beast, and actually by the end of Wrath of the Lich King, one of the highest DPS classes in the game. Between patch 3.0 and 3.3.5, which is the state that we're expecting to have Wrath of the Lich King in, almost all abilities were touched at some point throughout the patches. On that basis, we've got a lot to get through. We're going to start with a Protection Warrior today, and we're going to look at how all the existing abilities you've got already, how those have changed, new abilities that have been added in Wrath of the Lich King, all of the talent changes specifically for Protection Warriors, and finally, due to the addition of the inscription system, what glyphs are available for you as a Protection Warrior, which may impact how some of your abilities work. I just want to thank all you guys in the banner down below that have joined the channel as a member. More on how you can support the channel at the end of the video. Currently in TBC, Berserker Rage, which the Warrior enters a Berserker Rage, becoming immune to Fear, Sap and Incapacitate effects, and generating extra rage when taking damage, last 10 seconds, that requires Berserker stance at the moment in TBC. In Wrath of the Lich King, Berserker Rage can be used in any stance. Challenge and Shout is a whopping 10-minute cooldown in TBC. It's now down to 3 minutes in Wrath of the Lich King. All of the stances have gone through minor changes, so Battle Stance now increases your armor penetration of all your attacks by 10%. Defensive stance, while it doesn't say it, actually had its threat increased by 45%, and instead of reducing the damage you deal by 10%, it now only reduces the damage you deal by 5%. The reduction of the damage you take is still 10%. And Berserker stance still gives you your 3% crit, but it now only increases the damage you take from 5%, which is actually down from 10% in TBC. Disarm's rage cost has been reduced from 20 rage down to 15 rage, and it also disarms ranged weapons as well as melee now. Mechanically, how Intervene acts is exactly the same, but it also now reduces the threat of the target that you intervene by 10%. A great one for Protection Warriors is Mocking Blow has not only been reduced to a 1-minute cooldown, but it's also usable in defensive stance. One thing worth noting is the damage portion of this has been removed completely, and it only has 1 rank now, but if the target is tauntable, it also deals weapon damage. A couple of minor ones that are neither here nor there, but Pummel also only has 1 rank now and causes no damage. Exactly the same with Hamstring, it only has 1 rank now and causes no damage. Overpower no longer has a portion of its damage as bonus damage, it is now just flat weapon damage. You'll have much more frequent use of the ability thanks to the talent Taste for Blood. Recklessness is now only on a 5-minute cooldown, and it's had a slight change where your next 3 special ability attacks have an additional 100% to critically hit, but all damage taken is increased by 20% and this lasts 12 seconds. Same goes for Retaliation. This is now also on a 5-minute cooldown, but the duration has been reduced to 12 seconds, as have the charges. Much like all the other utility abilities, Shield Bash now deals no damage and only has 1 rank. Shield Slam's now available to all warriors. This is no longer a talent, as we will see when we get to the talent section. Shield Wall is also on a 5-minute cooldown now and reduces all damage taken by 50%. Mine shows 3 minutes because I'm actually using the Glyph of Shield Wall, which reduces the cooldown of Shield Wall by 2 minutes, but Shield Wall will now only reduce 40% damage. We'll talk more about that in the Glyph section. Where Slam ordinarily resets the swing timer, all it does now is actually suspends it, so if you were 0.1 second away from your swing timer resetting after using Slam, you will almost instantly hit with it. Thunderclap damage has been increased, but so has the cooldown, and it now affects all targets, which will quite literally make every Protection Warrior watching this video right now jump with joy, hopefully. One thing to note here as well is the ability actually counts as a ranged attack, so it gets double the amount of damage from critical strikes instead of 150%. Your Taunt now finally can be used at range. No longer is it just restricted to melee, it's now got a 30-yard range. Intimidating Shout has also had its cooldown reduced, it's now only on a 2-minute cooldown. Both Battle Shout and Commanding Shout have had their range by default put up to 30 yards instead of 20 yards, and you can increase this up to a maximum of 45 yards with 2 talent points. When it comes to Blood Rage, you now get an additional 10 rage instantly, so it now gives you 20 rage and then 10 rage over the next 10 seconds. Execute will now never use more than 30 rage because it will have the 15 rage cost that it's got by default, and it will use up to a maximum cost of 30. Shield Block has gone through a very substantial change. This is showing a 40-second cooldown, but it's actually a 1-minute cooldown, but it's currently affected by my talents. What it does now in Wrath of the Lich King is increases your chance to block and your block value by 100% for 10 seconds. It's an amazing ability to use on the pull, just so there's no real quick spike damage coming in, and obviously very useful when it comes to high periods of damage that are predictable. And a real minor one, but I thought it was worth mentioning, if you're leveling a warrior in Wrath of the Lich King, Victory Rush is now trained at level 6. And warriors get some very nice new abilities. So you've got Heroic Throw, which is a 30-yard range on a 1-minute cooldown, which throws your weapon at the enemy, causing 1082 damage based on attack power. This ability causes high threat, so very nice for tanks. Then you also get Shattering Throw, which is on a 5-minute cooldown. It's a 1.5 second cast time, and it throws your weapon at the enemy, causing 1082 damage based on attack power, reducing the armor of the target by 20% for 10 seconds, or removing any invulnerabilities, such as a Paladin bubble. So absolutely amazing for both PvE and PvP. A warrior with healing, you say? So Enraged Regeneration, on a 3-minute cooldown costing 15 rage, you regenerate 30% of your total health over 10 seconds. This ability requires an Enrage effect. It then consumes all Enrage effects and prevents any from affecting you for the full duration. Only really be used in case of emergency because you don't want to remove your Enrage effects, but like you can see, it heals for really, really good amounts. So that's all the new abilities and how existing abilities have changed. Quite an extensive list. Now let's get stuck into the talents. When it comes to the protection talents, there's not mass amounts to change, I wouldn't say. Some bits have been moved around, they've taken bits out of arms and put it into protection where it sits better, things out of protection. Whatever, but you're about to find out, so let's have a look. So when you actually compare TBC, which this is TBC, and you compare it with Wrath of the Lich King, which this is Wrath of the Lich King, you can see a lot of the icons remain the same. They've just moved around a little bit. There's been subtle changes and we're going to cover it all. So in TBC, Improved Blood Rage increases your instant rage generated by 6. It's had a small buff because in Wrath of the Lich King, it actually increases the rage generated by your Blood Rage ability by 50%, which now means Blood Rage will be generating 30 rage at the cost of health and then generating an additional 15 rage over 10 seconds. Shield Specialization has moved up from where it sits in Tier 2 in TBC, and in TBC it's got a 100% chance to generate 1 rage when your block occurs, whereas in Wrath of the Lich King it actually generates 5 rage when a block, dodge or parry occurs. You still get the 5% block chance. Improved Thunderclap has moved over from the arms tree in TBC into Tier 1 for protection in Wrath of the Lich King, and it reduces the cost of your Thunderclap ability by 4 rage and increases the damage by 30% and the slowing effect by an additional 10%, which then means your Thunderclap increases the time between their attacks by 20% for the cost of 13 rage, and of course it can hit unlimited amounts of targets now. Insight's a new addition which increases the critical strike chance of your Heroic Strike, Thunderclap and Cleave abilities by 15%. Not a lot to say there, just extra damage, it's always nice. Anticipation's still in the game, but it's changed. Where this is ordinarily where you would get your free 20 defense, no longer is that the case. Now it's just a flat 5% dodge with 5 points. Last Stand's gone through quite a change, and really when I say quite a change, it's just a cooldown reduction. But in TBC, it's on an 8-minute cooldown, granting you 30% of your maximum health for 20 seconds. It's still doing the same effect, but now only on a 2-minute cooldown. Improved Revenge has also gone through a significant change, where in TBC, not only does it cost 3 points, and only gives you a 45% chance to stun the target for 3 seconds, it now increases the damage of your Revenge ability by up to 60% and causes Revenge to strike an additional target. So Cleave, Revenge hitting additional targets, Thunderclap hitting all targets. You can start to see how AoE threat just isn't an issue anymore. Shield Mastery has moved up in the tiers, but it doesn't do anything like what it used to do in TBC. Where in TBC, it would simply just increase the amount of damage absorbed by your shield by 30%. What it does now is increases your block value by 30%, and the big one, it reduces the cooldown of your shield block ability by 20 seconds. In the ability section at the start, I said shield blocks on a 1-minute cooldown. As you can see here, with it talented, it's only 40 seconds, and it's up for 10 seconds, giving you a 100% chance to block, and block value by 100% as well. So there's 30-second periods where you're without it, and then 10 seconds where you are. Pretty nice. Toughness is still there, but it also reduces the duration of all movements, slowing effects on you by 30% with 5 points. Improved Sunder Armor has been renamed to Puncture, which reduces the rage cost of your Sunder Armor and Devastate abilities by 3, so no change there. Improved Disarm has had a very nice change if it's something that you choose to use and use regularly, because not only does it reduce the cooldown of your disarm ability by 20 seconds, it causes the target to take an additional 10% damage while disarmed. So on those particular bosses that actually can be disarmed, 10% extra damage for the duration as well. Pretty huge. And that's changed from the TBC talent, which is quite boring, which just increases the duration of your disarm ability by 3 seconds. Improved Spell Reflection is another really nice one, because not only does it reduce the chance that you'll be hit by spells by 4%, when the ability is used, it will reflect the first spell cast against the 4 closest party members within 20 yards. So the spell hasn't necessarily got to be cast directly at you for you to be able to reflect it. Something pretty useful to use quite regularly if you've got it talented. So Improved Disciplines replaces what once was Improved Shield Wall. And Improved Shield Wall in TBC increases the effect duration of your Shield Wall ability by 5 seconds. What it actually does now is reduces the cooldown of your Shield Wall, Retaliation and Recklessness abilities by 60 seconds. So this now takes your Shield Wall down to a 2-minute cooldown if you have it glyphed. So 2-minute cooldown, reducing all damage taken by 40% for 12 seconds. Pretty nice. Concussive Blow still, on the face of things, looks the same. So in TBC it was just 12 rage, 45-second cooldown, and stuns the opponent for 5 seconds. Still stuns the target for 5 seconds on a 30-second cooldown for 12 rage. So it's had 15 seconds taken off the cooldown, but it also deals a substantial amount of damage. So at the moment it says 1,086 damage based on my attack power. But if you was to compare it to Shield Slam, even though Shield Slam is modified by shield block value, which I will have a reasonable amount of, damage difference ain't that different from Shield Slam. So it's now actually become incredibly useful, not only as a stun, but also gives you quite a lot of threat due to the amount of damage it's going to do. Improved Shield Bash has been renamed to Gag Order, and the reason for that is because it don't only affect Shield Bash anymore. Now it gives your Shield Bash and Heroic Throw ability a 100% chance to silence the target for 3 seconds, and it also increases the damage of your Shield Slam by 10%. So actually, this talent for utility-wise, being able to silence something at ranged, so it runs to you, so you can charge one, potentially silence the other with your Heroic Throw, actually quite nice. One-hand specialization still there and hasn't changed, so it just increases the physical damage you deal when a one-handed melee weapon is equipped by 10%. Improved defensive stance has changed though. In TBC, it just reduces your spell damage taken while in defensive stance by 6%. It still does that, but also when you block, parry, and dodge, you have a 100% chance to become enraged, increasing physical damage caused by 10% for 12 seconds. So not only is it just flat out extra threat while you're enraged, you can almost guarantee that you'll always have this on, ready to use in rage regeneration if you need the heal. Focus Rage hasn't changed. But in place of Shield Slam, you now have a lovely new ability called Vigilance. Focus your protective gaze on a group or raid target, reducing their damage taken by 3%, and transfers 10% of the threat they cause to you. In addition, each time they're hit by an attack, your taunt cooldown is refreshed. It lasts 30 minutes. Now, there's a couple of ways you can use this. You can simply put it on the off tank or the main tank if you're the off tank, so you're getting a portion of their threat, and because they're constantly being hit when you're not tanking, it's going to refresh the cooldown or reset the cooldown on your taunt. That's the obvious way to use it because it's also reducing the damage that the tank's taking. Or if you're the only tank, so there is no other tank to put it on, you put it on one of your big pumper DPSs, just so you're getting their threat, and you're going to be tanking all the time, so you don't need to reduce the other tank's damage. Even if there is another tank, you don't need to reduce their damage because they're not being hit. Maybe just not being hit as much as you because they're focusing on some adds every 30 seconds or something like that. So you put it on your big pumper DPS, so you're getting some of their threat. Just really briefly looking at the TBC tree, I should have mentioned the removal of a couple of things a little bit higher up. So Improved Shield Block is no more, because Shield Block works completely different now. And Defiance, which increases your threat generation by 15% while in defensive stance, and it also increases your expertise by 6%. This has also been removed. But the reason I wanted to speak about this now is because if we look at Vitality, which increases your total stamina by 5% and your total strength by 10%, in Wrath of the Lich King, it increases your total strength by 6% and your stamina by 9%, but you also get that 6 expertise. So the 6 expertise you lose from Defiance, you make back up for in Vitality now. Onto Safeguard, which just reduces damage taken by the target of your Intervene ability by 30% for 6 seconds. Doesn't look massive on paper, but there will be certain fights where this can come in incredibly useful. Warbringer is the one talent which you're going to absolutely love because it makes your Charge, Intercept and Intervene abilities usable while in combat and in any stance. In addition, your Intervene ability will remove all movement impairing effects, which is also very nice. But being able to charge whilst in combat, allow me to demonstrate, is absolutely amazing, especially for charging in, using your Heroic Throw on the pool. It feels great. Devastate's had its damage increased quite substantially, so in TBC, it's only 50% weapon damage plus 15 for each application of Sunder Armour, whereas in Wrath of the Lich King, it's actually 120% weapon damage. We'll ignore the actual modifier because that's going to change depending on rank. Everything else is new now, so now it's time for you to get excited. So critical block being the first one, your successful blocks have a 60% chance to block double the normal amount and increase your chance to critically hit with your shield slam ability by an additional 15%. So this is very nice. Flat out damage mitigation and extra damage on your shield slam. Pretty cool. Sword and Board's a great one. It increases the critical strike chance of your Devastate ability by 15%. And when your Devastate or Revenge ability deals damage, it's got a 30% chance of refreshing the cooldown of your shield slam ability and reducing the cost by 100% for 5 seconds. And when you think about the amount you can be spamming Devastate, you can see Sword and Board is going to proc all the time. And then Damage Shield looks a bit boring, but you've got to remember it's just consistent threat. So whenever you take damage from or block a melee attack, you cause damage equal to 20% of your block value. So again, just consistent, steady threat. That's what you want. And then finally Shockwave, which is absolutely amazing for ads and for 5-man heroic dungeons, anything where you've got a lot of mobs. So for 12 rage on a 20-second cooldown, it sends a wave of force in front of the warrior, causing 2.1k damage based on attack power and stunning all enemies within 10 yards in a cone for 4 seconds. It looks something like this. Boom. But, you know, you can charge in, get them all stunned. In that time, you're thunderclapping them all. You could be cleaving them as well. You know, it's all this AoE damage potential, which really just starts to make the warrior feel really strong as a tank. Not that it didn't feel strong before. I'm not trying to insult you warriors, but you know what I mean. And that's all the protection talents. Now, I don't want to spend too much time talking about the other trees because obviously we're going to cover those in the other videos, but I will just dip into some of the ones that are more obvious that you'll be interested in taking. Heroic Strike you're going to be using all the time. Reducing the rage, that's still there. You've still got Deflection to get your parry. So this is actually where Tactical Mastery moved to. As you know in TBC, Tactical Mastery is actually in the protection tree. For additional threat, you'll want to get down to Empower to increase the critical strike damage bonus of your abilities and to cause them to bleed. For a high threat build warrior, you're probably going to go down only as far as this. And then when it comes to Fury, the new added talent is really good and really hard to deny that you would ever not have it as any spec warrior because it's just free attack power. What it does with 3 points is increases your attack power by 3 for every 108 armor you've got. I currently have 21.8k. So just from those 3 points is about 600 attack power for me. There are other options in Fury that you can go down to get, but honestly, you're probably going to want the additional threat from going deep down into arms, or if you're not doing that, you're probably going to have more points in protection, only going for the sort of defensive talents in arms, and then maybe picking up sort of armor to the teeth and booming voice, which booming voice is exactly the same as well. There's not that much change in the first couple of tiers of Fury anyway, as you'll find out in the Fury video. And that's the talents. Hopefully that was educational. There's a lot of things in the talents that have changed, a lot of good changes that you're going to be excited about as a prot warrior. Now, I just want to have a look at some of the glyphs that are available. Not all of them. It's not an exhaustive list, although the minor glyphs will look at them all because there's only 7 or 8. There's not many at all. But major glyph-wise, we'll just focus on the ones that you have at least got the potential to use as a prot warrior. If you don't know what glyphs are, you can use 3 minor glyphs and 3 major glyphs, and they get added with the inscription system during Wrath pre-patch. So you'll need a scribe to be able to make you them, but that's your problem. Let's have a look at the glyphs. Starting off with the boring ones, the minor glyphs. So you've got Glyph of Battle, which increases the duration of your battle shout ability by 2 minutes, which you're probably not going to use because you'd leave that to your arms or Fury warrior. Glyph of Blood Rage is a nice one, which just reduces the health cost of your Blood Rage ability by 100%. Glyph of Charge can be incredibly useful at times because it increases the range of your charge ability by 5 yards. So if you're wanting to get something off of a healer very quickly and they're just out of your range, that could be quite annoying. Glyph of Charge can fix that. Glyph of Command is the one that you would use instead of Glyph of Battle, of course, because this increases the duration of your commanding shout ability by 2 minutes. More useful for leveling, but Glyph of Enduring Victory could be a choice, which increases the window of opportunity in which you use your Victory Rush by 5 seconds. Glyph of Mocking Blow increases the damage done by your Mocking Blow ability by 25%. And then Glyph of Thunderclap, which is actually pretty decent, even though it doesn't sound that great. It basically just increases the radius of your Thunderclap ability by 2 yards. That 2 yards could be the difference between it hitting a mob and not hitting a mob, so pretty good. Then as for major glyphs, you've got Glyph of Barbaric Insults, where your Mocking Blow ability generates 100% additional threat. Glyph of Blocking, which increases your block value by 10% for 10 seconds after using your Shield Slam ability. Now you're going to be using Shield Slam more often than every 10 seconds. So this is basically 10% additional block value, which is really, really nice and probably a must-have. Glyph of Devastate now just makes your Devastate ability apply 2 stacks of Sunder Armor, so you can get that stacked up a lot quicker. That's very nice. Glyph of Heroic Strike gives you 10 rage when you critically strike with your Heroic Strike ability, and on single target you want as much rage as possible, and you will pretty much be using Heroic Strike constantly in place of your melee swings, so this could be a good option. Glyph of Intervene increases the number of attacks you intercept with your intervene target by 1. Would be very niche circumstances where this could be useful. Another major glyph that you could consider is Glyph of Cleaving. Whilst it seems like a DPS glyph to begin with, it's extremely good in AoE situations, even for protection. Glyph of Last Stand reduces the cooldown of your Last Stand ability by 1 minute, which reducing the cooldown of any major cooldown like that is obviously one that you'd have to consider. If you find yourself charging around a lot, Glyph of Rapid Charge reduces the cooldown of your charge ability by 7%. Glyph of Resonating Power reduces the rage cost of your Thunderclap ability by 5. When you really think about some of these we're going over, there is a lot of good options for protection warriors. Like even Glyph of Revenge, which after using Revenge, your next heroic strike costs no rage. Having Glyph of Revenge, using a free heroic strike which crits and gives you 10 rage instead of costing any, very nice. Glyph of Shield Wall, which we've already looked at briefly when we was looking at the abilities. It reduces the cooldown of Shield Wall by 2 minutes, but the Shield Wall now only reduces damage taken by 40%. So you're losing 10% of that damage taken, but to be able to use it a lot more frequently, because reducing the cooldown by 2 minutes is huge, so a very, very solid glyph. Glyph of Shockwave reduces the cooldown on your Shockwave ability by 3 seconds. Glyph of Taunt can be an incredibly important one, which increases the chance for your Taunt ability to succeed by 8%. So because it goes off spell hit, if you're only melee hit capped, and it's a boss that absolutely has to be taunted, a missed taunt could wipe the raid. Using this is a must. And other than minor ones like reducing the cooldown of Spell Reflection by 1 second, or Glyph of Vigilance, where your Vigilance ability transfers an additional 5% of your target's threat, which are not going to have threat issues, not to the point where you would need to use this glyph. That is quite an exhaustive list of every possible glyph you can use. And that's the Protection Warrior. I hope you enjoyed it. That was a little bit longer than I expected it to be, but hopefully you stayed all the way till the end. So I won't drag the end out. If you did like the video, please drop it a like. It does help out. Consider subscribing to the channel. And roll the outro. There's lots of ways you can support the channel to keep me here putting out World of Warcraft content and covering all future MMOs. Consider joining the channel as a member. You get access to emotes. Everyone will know you're a member when you comment on future videos because you get a nice icon next to your name. And you get access to members-only videos, which I'll be putting a lot of on the channel throughout the year. Additionally, there's a Patreon link in the description as well. Thank you for watching all the way to the end, and I'll see you on the next one.